Let's open to everybody.
So do we start soon or?
Yeah. We have to let them in. Can you let them in, Agnes? Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's workshop, Essential Steps for Introduction and Scale-Up of the BPaL containing regimens. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. So your microphone has been muted to avoid background noise, and we encourage you to turn your webcam on whenever you can throughout the session. Can we please also ask you to change your display name to your name and country? In order to do so, you click on Participants on the bottom menu bar, you hover the mouse over your name, you click on More, you click on Rename, and you can enter your name and country on the screen name field and click the OK button. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions and comments to today's presenters by typing your questions into the chat. You can send questions via the chat at any time during the session, and the moderators will collect them and address them whenever possible. You will have the opportunity also to intervene in today's session by submitting a request to do so via the chat or by raising your hand, and the moderators will record your request and inform you when you can intervene. They will have the opportunity to provide feedback in the end of a session evaluation survey, which will appear directly in your browser once the meeting closes. And it's important that you complete the survey right after the workshop, as the link will only be available for a short period of time. You will receive a certificate based on your attendance and the completion of the evaluation survey after the event. Please note that this session is being recorded, and the recording will be available to the public a few days after the session. Finally, it is my pleasure to inform you that today's chair are Dr. Agnes Gervart and Dr. Asker Yedilbayev. And you're going to see their bio appearing right now on the screen. Over to you, Dr. Yedilbayev.
Good time of the day, dear colleagues, and it is my pleasure to welcome you on this workshop, Essential Steps for Introduction and Scale-Up of the BPaL Regimen. As you know, back in 2020, with the release of the Module 4 of Tuberculosis Consolidated Guidelines dedicated to the treatment of the BPaL regimen, it has been recommended for treatment of patients with multi-drug resistance, rifampicin-resistant tuberculosis with additional fluoroquinolone resistance, and may be used on the operational research conditions for patients who have either have never had previous exposure to the drugs of this regimen before. So these days, the operational research is a mechanism that is considered by the WHO as an important mechanism, an instrument that can contribute to the generation of future evidence for the future recommendations and also boost the uptake of the current recommendations. So this event is bringing many partners, many of us together, including the national counterparts, donors, technical assistance agencies, those interested in this initiative. And also, thank you for supporting the uptake of the latest WHO policy guidance of that. So the objectives of this event are to define essential steps for the introduction and scale up of the BPaL regimen in the different country settings across the world, understand the patient perspective and patient support needs regarding treatment with BPaL regimen, familiarize themselves with the tools to assist planning for introduction and scale up of the BPaL regimen. And there will be, during this workshop, there will be working groups using the virtual breakout rooms in 4 of these sessions. So with this, it is my pleasure to introduce Sandeep, who will be the Sandeep Juneja, who will be also giving the welcoming speech. Dr. Sandeep is the Senior Vice President of Market Access of Tuberculosis Alliance. In this role, he leads the Alliance's work to design and implement access strategies for rapid adoption and uptake of the new tuberculosis regimens globally, especially in countries most affected with tuberculosis. And prior to Tuberculosis Alliance, Dr. Sandeep worked in the leadership positions at the medicines patent pool and the pharmaceutical industry, promoting access to medicines in therapeutic areas such as HIV, malaria, and hepatitis. Over to you, Sandeep.
Thank you, Oscar. I'm delighted to welcome all the participants to today's event, and it's great to see so much interest in the work we plan to do in this workshop today, if registrations are an indication. In fact, I would have been worried if this meeting didn't elicit such a response. I believe this response is an indicator that we as the TB community is tired of abysmally low treatment success rates that are sub 30, 40, or 50%. And not only do we need more effective regimens, it's high time that TB treatment was simpler and shorter and did not mean financial ruin for those affected by the disease. As NIX-TB and XENIX trials have demonstrated, it's possible to achieve 90% success rates for TB with only 3 drugs in a relatively short period of 6 months against the worst forms of TB. So while more than 30 countries have so far obtained predominant, some countries like Ukraine, Nigeria, South Africa, and about 10 others have taken the lead to implement the BPaL regimen under operations research conditions following WHO guidelines. And TB Alliance is proud to be working closely with them and our implementing partners on this. You'll be hearing from some of those countries today and what they're doing and some of the implementing partners as well. By supporting this workshop, we hope their experience will help you, the participants, in your own planning and thereby speeding access to newer regimens in more countries and to more people. With that, I'll hand over to Agnes to kick off the proceedings, and I wish you a successful meeting. Thank you. Agnes?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sandeep. So welcome to you all from KNCV TB Foundation. We're delighted to co-organize this workshop. Currently, KNCV is supporting around 10 countries in providing access to this shorter and beneficial treatment regimen, the BPaL regimen, to eligible patients. And this workshop is intended to share the experience of these early implementer countries and to share the tools that have been developed in collaboration with all here on the workshop, especially in collaboration with WHO. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce to you the speakers of today. The first speaker we will have is Dr. Victor Babuala. He is a medical doctor at the National TB and Leprosy Control Program in Nigeria with 12 years of experience focusing on drug-resistant TB. He anchors the operational research on the modified all-oral shorter treatment regimen supported by TDR and WHO, and the BPaL regimen supported by KNCV. He plays a vital role in developing the first national guideline for TB, DRTB clinical and programmatic management, and he was a member of a guideline development group for the DRTB in 2011, and currently is a member of the drug-sensitive TB guideline development group. Our second speaker of today will be Mansa Mbenga. Dr. Mansa is a PMDT consultant at KNCV Tuberculosis Foundation. He graduated as a medical doctor from the People's Friendship University of Russia, pursued a postgraduate degree in physiology from the same university and a diploma in tropical medicine and hygiene from the Royal College of Physicians in London. He has over 10 years of experience in TB with 6 years of clinical trial experience, and he successfully led the implementation of the TB practical with MSF in Uzbekistan. He's currently supporting the introduction of the BPaL regimen under operational research condition in KSV-supported countries under the Live2B project. The third speaker is Virko Mitskolava. She's a medical doctor with an MPH and PhD in epidemiology and global health, with over 10 years of experience in TB research, programmatic management, and capacity building. She has provided consultancies for WHO, USAID, ESDC, and focused on TB control program reviews and operational review in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Virko joined KSV in April 2017 and currently works as a senior epidemiologist and support countries in introducing new drugs and regimens and in building translation research capacity. Our fourth speaker is Dr. John Chuckley. Dr. John Chuckley is the head of the Division of Microbiology Research at the International Tuberculosis Research Center. He has been committed to the Live2B BPaL operational research project as a technical lead of laboratory capacity building. He identified the pathogenic factor of tuberculosis at the Max Planck Institute in Germany and is currently participating in the research of the genetic characteristics of Mycobacterium tuberculosis and the development of the rapid tuberculosis diagnostic system based on Korean technology. And the last speaker today is Ms. Suzanne Staples. Dr. Suzanne Staples is a medical doctor and head of research at THINK, which is a TB and HIV investigative network in South Africa. She started doing research in 2012 as a principal investigator of global clinical trials, as well as conducting independent research. She completed a master's degree in transdisciplinary health and development studies in 2017, completing her biomedical knowledge for a holistic approach. She received recognition for her work when awarded an international research fellowship in 2017 through the EDCTP. Currently, she leads her own research department looking at the impact of TB as well as technological advances in healthcare. From these people, we will have other people supporting the facilitation of the meetings, but they will introduce themselves during the breakout sessions. So now I would like to hand over to Dr. Victor Babuala for his presentation and a patient testimony. I think we need the support from the.
We are seeing your screen, Dr. Babuala.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. You need to be in presentation mode, though.
All right. Let's try to do that. Okay. I'm trying to fix it in presentation mode. It's not.
Maybe you
okay, let me just start. Once again, I thank you.
Sorry, Victor, I'm asking Caroline, maybe she can share it for you in the presentation mode.
Yes, okay, just help me fix it in the presentation mode. It's not going from here.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present on the lessons learned from Nigeria concerning the implementation of the BPaL operational research. My presentation, I have no conflict of interest as far as this presentation is concerned. And basically, I will be talking quickly on the Nigerian TB profile, looking at the burden of DRTB in Nigeria, the BPaL operational plan, the pre-implementation phase, enrollment status, the patient treatment status, challenges, mitigating strategies, and then acknowledging those who have supported us in the implementation of these studies. Like we all know that the World Health Organization approved the use of the BPaL regimen under operational research condition. And the National TB and Leprosy Control Program, we adopt KNCV to go ahead to implement the use of this regimen under operational research conditions. And based on this, through the support of KNCV, we were able to commence implementation in November 2020. However, we had a lot of things that came in between. However, before that, I want you to know that Nigeria have a TB incidence rate of 290 per 100,000 population. Annually, we have approximately 552,000 cases annually. And our incidence in terms of for DRTB is 4.3% among new cases and 15% among retreatment cases. We have a total of 505 gene experts machines, all distributed, installed across the country for diagnosis of TB. And we adopted the gene expert machine as the first line of, diagnosis. Okay, so the estimated body for DRTB in Nigeria is 21,000. Please, can you go back to the previous slide? You're moving too fast. Okay, 21,000 estimated burden for DRTB across the country. And from the 2020 global report, it shows that we are able to diagnose 2,384, which is like 11%, of case detection for drugs and tuberculosis. And out of which we are only able to enroll 1,975. So 3% of them are not being enrolled. We have a treatment success rate of 77%. So all in all, it shows that our case finding for DRTB, even though the case finding for susceptible TB is high, actually been encouraging. So we're trying to see what we can do about this. Next slide. Next slide.
Yeah, just give me a second, I'm trying. Yep. This is Dr. Babuala, right?
Yeah, can you move to the next slide?
Next one, this one?
The slide's not moving. Okay, so we developed an operational plan, a BPaL operational plan to implement this research project, and it was heavily supported by the KNCV, both in terms of funding and also in terms of please can you in terms of funding, and technical support also was given adequately. And this was way back in 2020. The protocol was developed, was approved by the ethical review board, and also we did some pre-initiation visits to sites that were selected. We selected some sites based on some certain criteria where we think this research will take place. And there were issues of drug procurement that came into place. The drug procurement was supported by Global Fund through the Global Drug Facility. So all these were processes that were already built into the operational plan, which was really very essential to make sure that the research, was a success. However, we could not actually keep to the time because some many factors came into play in terms of making sure that before we could get ethical approval, it took some time, like almost about 3 to 4 months, and a lot of other things that came into play, the issues of drugs and things which I'm going to discuss with us later. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so we reviewed our guidelines, our policy documents. Immediately, we adopted the regimen as recommended by WHO. we reviewed our guideline and we included this in the guideline, and algorithms, everything was put in place to make sure that this implementation goes on as planned. A lot of capacity building into place, especially for the site where the research will take place. And we selected 4 sites, 4 states. Let me just say that Kano, Lagos, Adamawa, and Bauchi. And these are high burden states because the selection was based on some citing criteria. States that have very high TB notification rates, like Lagos and Kano, maybe Bauchi and Adamawa also. And then another criteria was that the state must have a DRTB treatment center so that patients who participate in the research will be initiated, in the treatment center first before they can be allowed to go into ambulatory treatment. And then also the state should have a TB reference laboratories to ensure easy follow-up investigation, baseline and follow-up investigation, things like that. And also it must be states that we have experienced physicians and healthcare workers who have managed MDR-TB cases in previous times, of which, the BPaL regimen will not be too strict to them because it's just in line with what they have been doing, previously. So these were the 4 criteria we used to select, states that will participate in the operational research. Next slide. Next slide.
I'm doing it. Yep.
Oh, okay. All right. So currently the sample size was supposed to be 50. But currently, as I speak, we have enrolled 8 patients. It appears pretty slow, because of some challenges which we faced while we commenced, implementation. And some of these challenges could, I'm going to talk about that later on, slowed us down. But we're very optimistic that before the end of the year, or probably very early next year, we're going to meet up with that sample size. So because of this slow pace, we had to increase enrollment, so to involve some other adjacent states. So there was expansion in terms of involving other states to be able to ensure that we meet up with the sample size. We also make sure that the patient had a provision of patient support, to make sure that once they enrolled on treatment, they are able to follow through with their treatment without, getting lost to follow-up. Then we support the healthcare workers also in terms of home visits and some of these things that are necessary for them to keep, their patients. So as you can see, next slide, you can see some of the, there's a picture there. Can you please punch? Shows that's the map showing the core states, the dark colored, and then the adjoining state that were drafted in for us to be able to meet up with the sample size. And you can see there, these are the treatment centers and some of the patients, that are current, that are participating in the BPaL operational research. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so the 8 patients we have enrolled, you can see the line list there. Though the number is still small, we're still hoping to get to 50. You can see only one of them really had this adverse reaction, that was the second patient who had the QT prolongation at week 4. Aside from that, every other patient tolerated the drug excellently well, and there was no serious adverse reaction noticed. So all the patients were doing really, really fine. Next slide. However, we faced some challenges during implementation, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic of last year. There was also the issue of delay. We initially, there was one mistake we made. We were trying to train sites based on the fact that they already have a patient, but that delayed enrollment. And later on, we decided to train all the sites, leave them open until when they, we have the patient. Also, we had delay in pretomany. We had all the other components of the drug, BPaL, linezolid, but the pretomany, which happens to be a new drug, we had challenges, a delay in arrival of the drug. That was the first thing. And then secondly, when the drug arrived, the government policy changed. Because the government now brought a new agent who is supposed to do QA, quality assurance, for most of the drugs that are coming to the country. And this agency, or this agent, is not recognized by the global drug facility. So it caused a lot of drags and delay, argument, forth and back before we eventually were able to get the drugs. Then also last year we had a drop in DRTB notification in Nigeria due to the COVID. And you know that DRTB is essentially diagnosed laboratory diagnosis. So a lot of patients couldn't access gene experts, and because of that, we had a drop. So this also affected enrollment. Then other factors like prolonged turnaround time of second line, some reference labs where we don't get results on time, you know, and also delay in pre-existing, you know, laboratory investigations and things like that, clearance of drugs at the port, and then we had some issues with staff attrition. And some of the sites we trained some of the staff. In fact, at the central point, we also had one of the project manager who has to join our organization. So some of these things, you know, we had a short delay. However, I think we are getting above some of these challenges very soon. Next slide. So the mitigating strategy one was for us to expand to adjoining states. So because those 4 states were not giving us the figures we needed, we only have 8 patients so far. So we have to extend to adjoining state. And because of that extent, we have some new patients, you know, now coming in from the adjoining state. But this goes with a lot of logistic arrangements to make sure that if a patient is referred from adjoining state to the treatment center, a proper arrangement must be made to make sure that it goes back to the initial state, to make sure that is properly followed up, to make sure that the patient does not get, you know, lost follow-up. So all these were factored in, and adequate plan and budgeting was made for this. Then collaborating with centers to improve patient notification is another factor. We had to reach out to all the state program managers, and from national coordinator also sent an official letter to make sure that all notified pre-DRTB cases, you know, are immediately sent to those treatment centers to make sure that they are put on treatment. And we are beginning to get a very fast response. So we're optimistic that we'll meet up with a sample size of 50, even though we have 8 patients as at the moment. Next slide.
Sorry, Dr. Babula, I'm trying to move the slide. Just give me a second. Okay. Yep, that's the last slide.
Oh, okay. So my acknowledgement goes to the KNCV. The KNCV has been very supportive in the implementation of this research, both in terms of funding, in terms of technical support, and then also the Global Fund was instrumental to the procurement of the drugs. The USAID long project also is, you know, highly involved in the scale up, you know, of the BPaL. Eventually, when the result is out, we had a lot of collaboration with WHO. Johnson Pharmaceutical was supportive in capacity building, the Regimen Foundation, the TB Alliance. We're very grateful because they have been the brain behind the whole thing. And then we also have other organizations like Stop TB Partnership, Session for Reproductive and Family Health, German Leprosy Association, and the Institute of Human Biology. All these organizations. So the research is a lot of people are involved, a lot of stakeholders to make sure that it actually succeeds. And because of this, we acknowledge all those who have contributed to make sure that this research is successful. Thank you very much. Thank you. Over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Babuala, for this sharing of your experiences and the challenges you encountered in introducing the BPaL regimen in Nigeria. I think now we will get a recording of a patient story.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is FMCOLA Treatment Center. We are here today with one of our clients who is on the BPaL regimen. Our client is currently on his 4th month of treatment, and would like you to meet him in this interview. Sir, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah. I am Laori Emmanuel Banem. I'm 43 years, and I'm indigenous of Adamawa State, Yola South local government, and I'm a civil servant.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Have you ever taken treatment for TB before, sir?
Yes, I have. I started taking my treatment last year around May time. In fact, for almost 9 months. But after the treatment, things have not changed. So I was not feeling better like the way it's supposed to be. So I've decided to come back and check myself again. And then when I came back, I was tested and I was found positive still. So it shows that the first drugs I used before, does not work.
Thank you.
So I was placed.
So how can you now compare your present treatment with the past treatment you had? Any problems you had before that you're not having now, or are there any differences?
In fact, the treatment I'm taking now is even better than before. Well, I'm on my 4th month now, but in fact, I'm feeling better than, in fact, anyone. Because all the feelings I had before, as of now, I don't feel.
Feelings like vomiting,
yeah, vomiting, dizziness, and some kind of a chest pains and whatever. But for now, it's okay.
So I mean you don't feel any side effects with this
I don't
present
feel
treatment?
anything. The exercise I've not been able to do before. I did now.
Thank you very much. So how do you see your prospect now of getting better with this new treatment?
Because what I cannot do before, I can do more better now.
Thank you very much. So our client is on his 4th month of treatment as we have introduced, and he has been regular at his follow-up. He's been evaluated, and biochemically his results have been within normal limits. ECG readings have been okay. We have not recorded any event in the course of this treatment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nigeria, for this, for the presentation and the testimony of the patient who is clearly happy with his current treatment more so than he was with his earlier treatment. Maybe we have time for a short question. There's one question from Natalia Litvinenko. She asks Dr. Babuala, how many patients were screened during the 6 months after the start of the BPaL project? And what is the reason that only 8 patients were enrolled?
Can I answer now?
Yes, please.
Okay, to respond that yes, initially initially we were trying to get surveillance data from the reference laboratories because we discovered that most of the diagnosis of the pre-XDR TB, those informations most of the time in Nigeria comes from the surveillance data from the reference lab when patients are sent, for LPA and, when they fail MDR-TB treatment. So we initially got those data from the reference lab and we're trying to trace all those patients. Unfortunately, we discovered we couldn't, we only got very few of them. Most of them were could not be traced because sometimes some of these patients, they don't leave the correct phone numbers and things like that. We were able to trace a few of them. So what we now did was we sensitized the state programs to make sure that any patient that has failed MDR-TB treatment or any patient that has resistant to fluoroquinolone, they should compulsorily make sure they notify them. So because of that information, they were on the lookout. Initially, when they see patients like that, they just place them on other regimen. There are other regimen aside from the BPaL. They just put them on the other regimen. So we have to tell them that, look, these patients should be referred specifically to those sites, and if they fulfill the inclusion criteria, they should be put on treatment. So some of those processes and orientation of the healthcare workers across the country, getting them to know that there's an ongoing research, getting them to know that this is a criteria and other things that delayed us in actually getting our required number of patients on time.
Thank you, Dr. Babuala. Without further ado, I would like to invite Dr.
Benga, which actually were not notified to the program.
Thank you, Dr. Babuala. Hello.
Yeah.
Can I now invite Dr. Manta Benga to introduce the BPaL protocol development?
You need to be
good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We see. Yeah, presentation was good. Thanks.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. And thank you very much for joining us on these occasions. And we'd like to share all the experience that we have during this past period. So I have no conflict of interest to report. And our today's discussion will focus on the BPaL operational research, the eligibility criteria, so treatment initiation, modifications, and discontinuation, and also the safety monitoring of the patients. And also there will be a breakout session at the end of the presentations that we will discuss the challenges. And I think that all of the participants will have the opportunity to share their questions, and also if they have any plan to implement the BPaL, then it will be discussed during the session. And at the end of this presentation, we'll explain to you how you will enter into the different rooms for the breakout session. So the global incidence of drug-resistant tuberculosis. So we see that in 2019, so there were an estimate of 500,000 people that develop rifampicin-resistant TB and multi-drug resistant TB, so which is resistant to both rifampicin and isoniazid. So, and among them, there were 3.3 of new cases, and 18% of them were previously treated pulmonary TB cases. So, and the treatment success rate was 57%. However, in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted on the progress that has been made in the fight against tuberculosis. So you can see that there was a loss of track on the global targets that has been made. So there are 18% drop in the notification rate. So, and when it comes to DRTB, 15% drop on treatment. So, but there was some significant development that has been made on the improvement on the management of drug-resistant tuberculosis. The WHO recommended an all-oral tuberculosis regimen, either shorter regimen or longer regimen. So the shorter all-oral bedaquiline containing regimen was recommended for patients who has not been exposed to second-line TB drugs. So, and also who has been on those patients whom you know that are chloroquine resistant has been excluded. So the treatment is 9 to 12 months. So then the longer treatment regimen. So this regimen is for patients who are not eligible for the shorter all-oral bedaquiline containing regimen. So also for patients who has extensive TB disease and patients with severe extrapulmonary disease. So this regimen is for 18 to 20 months. So, but with the possibility of modifying the treatment duration. So if the patient has done well during the treatment period, so the treatment period can be reduced to 15 months. So, and designing the regimen was based on the recommended WHO groupings of TB medicine. So we have the BPaL regimen, so which we are going to focus much more on today. So, and the BPaL regimen was recommended under operational research conditions. So there should be an approved protocol with predefined inclusion and exclusion criteria. So there should be a monitoring schedule that will monitor patient safety, and also there should be patient support. So KNCV, so with partners, are collaborating and supporting countries on the implementations of the BPaL operational research. So presently, so we are supporting about 10 countries. So in Central and Southeast Asia, and also in Africa. So we developed a generic protocol that has been used to implement the BPaL operational research on the countries that has been supported by KNCV. So this protocol has been updated based on the experience and the experience we are gaining through this implementation process. And presently, the present protocol that we are using is version 4 of the protocol, which has been updated recently and incorporated some of the data that we get from the Zenix trial. So, and that was mainly to reduce the dosage of linezolid from the dosage of linezolid, which we will talk about later on. So, patient, if you talk about the patient selection, so you can say that all patients should be evaluated using a triage approach. So patients should be tested for first-line and second-line resistant using rapid molecular methods. And in places which you know that there are possibilities of using other new diagnostic methods, for example, like the Expert XDR or the TrueNet, so and has the ability to test patients for them. So the eligibility criteria. So eligible patients should have confirmed laboratory resistant to rifampicin and also fluoroquinolones. And patients should also have documented tolerance, treatment intolerance or treatment failure. So also the patient is supposed to be willing to sign an informed consent form. They should not be pregnant or breastfeeding at the period of enrollment into the BPaL regimen. Also, it's necessary to consider the age, the weight of the patient, and also the site of the disease. For example, when it is a extrapulmonary TB, which is severe extrapulmonary TB. So treatment initiation. So depending on the country policy, so treatment can be initiated either on ambulatory basis or on hospital basis. So the duration of treatment is 6 months. So, however, treatment can be extended to a period of 9 months for patients that still have a positive culture conversion after 4 months of treatment. For these patients, the treatment duration will be extended to 9 months. So, and the dosage of the components in the BPaL regimen, like for bedaquiline, so the dosage is 400 milligrams for 2 weeks, then it goes to 200 milligrams 3 times per week. So for pretormanate, so it's 200 milligrams throughout the treatment, and linezolid is 1,200 milligrams, which can be adjusted. So the modifications of the regimen. So as I said before, that we incorporated the Zenix result on linezolid into this protocol that we are using presently. So the modification for linezolid is allowed after completing 1,200 milligrams for 4 weeks. However, if a patient has a side effect and adverse events, and the patient will not be able to continue with 1,200 milligrams within the first 4 weeks, So the dosage can be reduced to 600 milligrams, but the patient is supposed to complete a 9 weeks of linezolid on 600 milligrams. So this is what we also incorporated from the Zenix trial results. For bedaquiline and pretormanate, so there is no dose modification. So, and if the BPaL regimen is supposed to be started, supposed to be interrupted, that's the full dose of the regimen. So in the first 4 weeks of treatment, if there is any side effect, it can be interrupted, but not more than 14 days. So, and throughout the treatment period, so if the BPaL regimen is supposed to be interrupted, it should be a maximum of 35 consecutive days. So, and any missed days should be made up, and this should not be more than 60 days after the end of treatment. So, and in all of these conditions, when it happens to a patient, the BPaL regimen is supposed to be discontinued, and the patients prescribe an effective treatment regimen. And we also need to remember that pretormanate should not be used outside the BPaL regimen. So safety monitoring. For safety monitoring should be applied for all the patients that are participating in the BPaL treatment. So, and safety monitoring should include both clinical and bacteriological to identify and detect timely adverse events, and those adverse events managed on time. And all adverse events should be recorded and reported accordingly. So these are adverse events that need special attention because of the drugs that are in the BPaL regimen. For example, peripheral neuropathy, optic neuritis, and myelosuppressions are caused by linezolid. And the high dose of linezolid might also put the patients at risk, and special monitoring needed for this. So the QT prolongation and hepatotoxicity can be a result of bedaquiline. So, and patients need also to be monitored to detect and report and manage all the adverse events in a timely manner. So that was the presentation for it. And now we will move into the breakout rooms. So, and right now, a screen will pop up on your windows, and you need to choose the screen that has popped up on your windows, and you will move out into the respective breakout rooms. And in the respective breakout rooms, so we will discuss the implementation of the BPaL introduction, scale up, and also the challenges that we will face on it. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the colleagues that has supported us and make these presentations go through. Thank you to you all.
Thank you. If I may also please download the document that was shared just at the minute in the chat. You will need those documents during the breakout session for this exercise. And again, don't forget to accept the invitation to join the breakouts. Otherwise, you will stay in the plenary. Thank you very much. You will now be sent into your respective breakout room.
Agnes, we'll give it back the floor to you. So we completed the session and the floor is back to you. Thank you very much. And thank you for all the participants and the moderators and the chairs. Thank you.
You are on mute, I believe.
You are muted.
Sorry. I hope we all had fruitful discussions. Oscar, would you like to maybe have a short word here?
Yes, thank you very much, Agnes. And definitely in our group exercise 1, we've been discussing on what are the challenges that our countries foresee on implementing the BPaL regimen under the operational research conditions. So, and also the discussion, the participants expressed and highlighted several challenges that can be there. First of all, it's also the understanding at the level of the Ministries of Health and National Drug Regulatory Authority level of the difference between the operational research and the clinical trial, because oftentimes something new is being considered as a trial, but this is not. And the operational research is the mechanism, the tool, the instrument that is close to the programmatic implementation. But at the same time, there were also other challenges listed, and I think that it will be captured in the recording, but more or less there were discussions around the challenges and availability of the goods for of the medicines, especially now during the COVID-19 times. There was also the challenges of finding the right patients who are eligible for this operational research in the fluoroquinolone resistance, in the settings with low prevalence of fluoroquinolone resistance among patients with MDR-RRTB. And the second the question was that has been discussing what is the benefit in the national context of introducing the BPaL regimen. Of course, everyone considered that shortening the duration of treatment and avoiding the deadly injectables that was recommended before for treatment of XDR-TB is bringing a lot of benefits, first of all, for the patient and for the health system, including the health providers who are treating patients, and opening the door to treating patients more in the outpatient settings. This is specific to some of the countries and regions. But at the same time, I mean, this regimen is bringing a lot of economic benefits as well if introduced. At the same time, operational research is bringing its own benefits in terms of improving the good clinical care of patients. And we as the WHO are welcoming the generation of evidence and submission for the better and stronger recommendations for treatment of this type of patients. Over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oscar. Maybe also a short word from Salah.
Yeah, thank you, Agnes. Thank you so much. Mamel, I mean, we agreed that she will be like recapping our room.
Okay, thank you, Salah. Yeah, so in our room, we had a lot of discussion and we touched on different aspects of the BPaL implementation. One was the challenge of procurement. For example, in Kyrgyzstan, it took like 3 months for the drugs to arrive simply because pretominid is a new drug, and therefore there were requirements from the country. But it was good that there was a way out with that. They listed it under the humanitarian route, and so they succeeded in bringing pretominid to the country. Another possible challenge is the lack of DST, because most patients who have failed a previous regimen would have been exposed to bedaquiline, and therefore they would not be theoretically eligible for BPaL. However, with the change in the protocol, even with exposure to bedaquiline and linezolid, if DST is done and the DST shows proof of susceptibility, then they can still be enrolled. Another aspect that we talked about was some challenges in the LPA. So I think this was a Philippine-specific challenge that was mitigated. There was a stock out of LPA kits in the country for 7 months in the National TB Reference Lab, but it was mitigated because the NTP collaborated with a private lab that was able to do the interim LPA testing for the patients, and therefore there were no delays in the identification of potential patients for BPaL. I think overall, the greatest challenge was the lack of laboratory capacity for DSP and for LPA that some countries expressed. We also touched a little about training that technical partners in the country are able to support the BPaL implementation through extensive trainings, not only of the health workers, but also of the TB medical advisory committees who assist the implementers in clinical decision making. So I think those are all the points that we discussed. Added value, of course, the quality of the regimen. It's only 3 drugs. It's only 6 months, and therefore it's a very attractive regimen and an additional armamentarium to what is already present in the country. So it will give benefit not only to patients, but also to the healthcare system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mamel, for the summary. Inge, maybe from our group, a very short summary because we're a little bit pressed for time.
Sorry, thanks, Agnes. Yeah, we really made a round to hear what sort of the experiences were currently. So Ukraine shared experience that they have already 120 patients enrolled, and actually, yeah, things are going really well. Only 1 patient died, and so the experience is very promising. Other countries have adopted the regimen, and like Thailand, they are waiting for approval. And they are planning to start enrollment, but countries are worried about the high dose of linezolid. So we discussed that, and countries were even asking, can we not start with 600 milligram? And other countries share their experiences on this high dose of linezolid, like, for example, Ukraine, that it can be managed quite well with dose modifications. And so that remains quite a concern for countries, and also on the exclusion after the Xenix results came out, whether we should start to include patients that are not resistant to quinolones, and how other countries are dealing with that. So South Africa shared their experience that currently they are actually still including patients with quinolone resistance, but based on those Xenix results, and that you can now use lower dosages, they might become more pragmatic in the future and also start to include patients that are not resistant to quinolones. And they also share their experience that despite the high HIV co-infection rate in South Africa, this regimen is actually very well tolerated, but that you have to be aware of drug interactions. So those are the main topics that we actually discussed.
Thank you very much, Inge. Then without further ado, I would like to hand over to Verico with a request maybe to be as concise as possible in order to make up for some of the time.
Thanks, Agnes. I will try my best. Thank you. Yeah. I will try my best. Yeah. It's a pleasure to be here. So next 10 minutes or even less, I will try to talk about the implementation, BPaL implementation, monitoring and evaluation and its importance. I declare no conflict of interest. So in general, as we all know, the role of the monitoring is to track implementation and outputs systematically. In particular, with the BPaL introduction and scale up, we are interested in Systematic monitoring, whether the clinical management and monitoring of the patient during the treatment and after treatment follow-up follows the approved protocol. And we also intend to measure effectiveness and the safety of the BPaL containing regimens. As we all know, systematic collection of the data will help us to inform national and international policies about the BPaL use under operational research conditions and potentially under programmatic conditions. General principles which we are following for the introduction of the BPaL and the data collection related to this process are that patient data are collected using the standardized data collection forms with a core set of variables. And we put a lot of efforts to make sure that the data collection is standardized not within the country, but also across the countries. We are supporting the BPaL implementation. Patient data are collected from multiple sources, which is the patient interview, data abstraction from the patient medical cards, programmatic TP recording, and existing ADSM systems in the country. We think it's very important to have specially trained healthcare providers who will conduct the patient interviews and abstract the data where necessary. Data collection, we recommend that it's individual, patient-based, real-time, and electronic. Because we are introducing BPaL now under the operational research condition, and we encourage real-time of the monitoring of the patients taking the BPaL regimen. Also, unique identifier of the patient enrolled in the operational research must allow patient linkage with the TB surveillance system. We foresee in general that the BPaL will be implemented under the programmatic conditions in future. So we very much encourage countries to think about the kind of putting the variables necessary for the BPaL introduction monitoring under the TB surveillance system and make it a routine data collection process, or think at least about that. And in terms of the ADSM, we very much recommend to collect data on at least 3 types of adverse events, irrespective of their severity grade. This is adverse events leading to the treatment discontinuation or change in drug dosage, adverse event of special interest, and as you know, for each regimen, we have the component drug known safety profiles. So whatever adverse events are established to be associated with those drugs, so we want to collect those adverse events, and we of course want to collect information about serious adverse events as systematically as possible and as soon as possible. Considering all this, we have worked on the data collection tools, which are the forms and the electronic data collection platforms. Forms are fillable and printable PDF and Excel forms, and data collection platforms are A4 and REDCap. I must mention we had a very close collaboration with WHO Euro, and WHO Euro colleagues developed the Excel forms and the Info data collection platform. KNC, we worked on the REDCap development, and development of the standardized data collection forms. I will say a couple of words on the EPI-Info and REDCap. EPI-Info can be used offline, desktop, mobile versions are available. REDCap can be used online. Again, desktop and mobile versions are available, and REDCap is also password protected. And those tools which I just mentioned, both forms and the data collection platforms, can be provided both in Russian and English, and also can be adapted by the countries on their own native languages. This is just the data collection forms at a glance. Our intention was to follow the patient right from the point of the screening till the after treatment follow-up. So we have screening form, enrollment form, evaluation, which is kind of monitoring of the treatment process itself. We have treatment completion form, after treatment follow-up, and adverse event form. This is just a screenshot for your information, PDF versions of the form, and the MS Excel one, which I mentioned. Yeah, so you see that. And these data collection forms can be printed and filled by hand, or can be kind of filled in the computer and electronic ones shared. Okay. This is, again, screenshot of the data collection system, which is the red cup at this moment. I'm showing the inclusion criteria page. And this is a dashboard where you can see the patients entered already. These are the mock patients. And this is a screenshot of the EPI-info database in Russian with all these different pages to monitor the patient throughout entire. This is the schedule of the patient monitoring, and our data collection follows this schedule. And I want to talk, say a few words about the implementation monitoring indicators. We have worked on the 3 groups of indicators. The first one is the treatment coverage indicators. Then we have treatment safety indicators, and then we have treatment effectiveness indicators. On the next page, I will talk about the treatment coverage indicators. We are interested in number of patients who were screened for BPaL, and at this moment, this will be the patients who have resistance to rifampicin and fluoroquinolone, bacteriologically confirmed, or they are either contact of the patient, close contact of the patient with the resistance to rifampicin and fluoroquinolone, or as mentioned by Mansa in the first session, this can be the patients who have been previously treated by the MDR-TB treatment regimen, and they have experienced documented intolerance or non-response, irrespective of the fluoroquinolone resistance. And then we follow from there and see from those screened how many are eligible. And then from those who are eligible, how many are enrolled in the treatment. And we hope that all who will be eligible will be enrolled in the treatment. So we aim at 100% for the indicator 3. Then we have this treatment safety monitoring. I mentioned it earlier in this presentation. We monitor 3 types of adverse events. The one which results in the dose modification or the regimen interruption. Another one is adverse events of special interest and serious adverse events. So we have 8 indicators for that. Sorry, I have a problem to, okay, I managed. And we have treatment effectiveness indicators as mentioned. We have 8 indicators here. Also, and we monitor both interim treatment outcomes, end of treatment outcomes, and after treatment follow-up outcomes. We do monitoring at month 2 of treatment, month 6 of treatment, then at the end of the treatment, and then follow-up after treatment at 6 months and 12 months. And we also have an indicator, as you know, the BPaL regimen has a duration of 6 months and 9 months in case there is a need for extension, so we monitor that as well. What proportion will we need the extension of the BPaL regimen? Drug sharing and technical assistance practices, data are owned by the country and managed and shared locally and internationally as per the data sharing agreement in line with the country data protection rules and regulations. Technical assistance in the data collection, analysis, and result dissemination is provided upon request from the country. At the end of this workshop, upon request, we will give an access to the data tools and provide technical assistance. And I'm providing the email addresses of myself and Alex Korotic from WHO Euro. We are the ones who worked on the development of those tools along with the colleagues at KNCV and WHO Euro team. So now this is all from my side, and I will just, Caroline, how do you want me to do? Shall I announce about the breakout session rules, or?
This is up to you, as you feel more comfortable.
And maybe we can reduce the time for the breakout session a little bit. Is that possible?
How much?
We are currently 30 minutes over time. So I think we should maybe make it 15 or 20 minutes, and then the other breakout groups also reduce a little bit.
And okay, I'm fine if everyone is okay with that. So there still is a 3 breakout rooms, and we very much encourage your participation. And please turn on video so we get to see each other, and we will have, you already have this experience with breakout rooms, so I will not take much of your time. It's just Caroline will share 2 documents which we will need during the breakout session. Thank you very much. Over from my side.
Thank you. So, dear participant, we will break for 5 minutes. I recommend that you do not log off from the Zoom meeting, because right after the break, the breakout session will start. So you already organized within both rooms. I will display a countdown slide for your convenience, so you know when the course will be resuming. And please also, before you go into the breakout, download the document that will be shared through the chat, like for the prior exercise. They're currently being shared at the moment. Thank you very much, and see you in 5 minutes then. Dear participants, we're now going to resume the course. You should join your breakout again as last time. You need to accept the invitation that is going to appear in your as a pop-up on your screen.
Sorry, Dr. Babuala, you were speaking and we were brought back to the main room, and perhaps we will have an opportunity to summarize. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we had a rich discussion.
Yeah. Dr. Babuala, I think Agnes will, yeah, thank you.
Can I go ahead?
Yeah, I think we should.
Thank you very much. And please go ahead with your summary of the concise summary of the discussions you had.
Oh, thank you very much. I think we had a rich discussion in the group looking at challenges that countries face in the implementation of the BPaL professional research. And we among the discussants expressed challenges, especially when it comes to the sharing of data with the getting approval or getting the national program, TB program to to sign the data agreement. However, some of the countries like the Philippines and Tajikistan were able to get this resolved by just ensuring that there's an agreement is built in for the NTP to sign and also for the KNCB to sign and to agree on how this data is going to be utilized. Then also we went further to discuss issues of adverse drug reactions, so which some of the participants really expressed their experience, especially in the use of linezolid, where issues of anemia and emanated on the issues of peripheral neuropathy, and the issue of dose adjustments, became absolutely necessary in some instances, just to make sure that the patients are comfortable, and also to make sure that the treatment is safe. So they had to adjust the dose, and some from 1,200 to 600 milligrams, just like it is written in the protocol. Then the electronic data collection also was discussed extensively. While some countries use the red cap, some use the the epi info, and it still boils down to the fact that using some of these data capturing tools, electronic data capturing tools, the signing of agreements, data agreements is very, very essential, especially for the NTPs. Because these are brick walls that some countries experienced, but they were able to get some of these things resolved. Then also, the last but not the least, issues of digitalization. There's some countries that they've been able to digitalize in terms of data of patients, and so it's actually important that the use of PMDT codes, like the Philippines and Tajikistan mentioned, that it's important that the routine data surveillance system, the fact that the research is going on does not mean that the patient should be out of the routine surveillance system. They should still be captured in the routine surveillance system. So if whatever data capturing tool is being used, electronic data capturing that is being used, make sure it is linked up to the routine data surveillance system, so that the patient are not missed out. They are still captured in the routine data surveillance system, so that they can give a proper account, of some of these patients. So I think that was what we discussed in brief.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Babuala. I would like to ask the reporters of the other two groups maybe to make a bullet point summary in the chat while we ask Dr. John Chuckley from ITRC to prepare for his presentation.
I asked run the pre-recorded one. Would you please?
Yeah, we will play.
Hello, everyone. Warm greetings from International Tuberculosis Research Center to all participants in this workshop. I'm pleased to present a laboratory readiness assessment toolkit used for BPaL operational research. I have no conflict of interest to report. This toolkit is divided into 4 sections, including instruction, questionnaires for general information, reference laboratories, and the OR sites, respectively. The instruction section describes the goal of this toolkit, terminology, list of a questionnaire, and instruction on how to fill out the questionnaires. This toolkit is designed to address the needs of TB diagnostic labs for those engaged in the BPaL OR. And the toolkit consecutively brings general information, questionnaires of reference laboratories, and then questionnaires of OR sites. General information requests country name, the contact information of surveyor who carries out need assessment using this toolkit, the number of reference laboratories and OR sites to be engaged, and reference laboratories to perform diagnostic tests for associated OR sites. Then questions on necessary information such as turnaround time to diagnose XDR-TB, level of laboratories will run diagnostic tests, and kind of technical supports and pieces of training required for the diagnostic laboratories. This toolkit is also asking about the availability of the expert XDR-TB system on diagnostic testing sites. The question is included even though not many countries adopted expert XDR-TB yet, but it can greatly contribute to screening patients to be enrolled in LiveTB operational research. The next 2 slides will be in the same format. The only difference is that one is a request for reference laboratory and the other is for OR sites. You need to fill out laboratory information at the top, and then you can check either yes or no for which diagnostic method you use in the reference laboratory. This includes microscopy, culture method, phenotypic DST method, molecular DST method that you use, and sample storage. Then it is followed by a readiness check of laboratory SOPs and QA/QC manual. The procurement of supplies is also important because it takes quite some time to procure necessary materials in certain countries. Procurement plans should be made in a timely manner. For equipment, simply mark yes or no and write down the quantity of certain equipment you have. Finally, you may describe what kind of training is necessary for microscopy, phenotypic DST, and LPA. For those of you who do not have previous experiences in predominant phenotypic DST, ITRC has prepared a training material for BPaL PDST, and you can download it from the ITRC website. The same contents and flow will apply to this slide, which is about our sites. When the needed assessment of participating laboratories from each country is finalized, ITRC compiled information from all the inputs through the questionnaires presented so far. This slide shows an example of compiled format. This is the end of our presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, ITRC, for the and Dr. John Chuckley for the introduction to this laboratory assessment. We will now go into the breakout groups. And also here we will shorten the time a little bit to make up.
And please download the documents that are currently available in a chat in order to be prepared for your breakout. Thank you.
Sorry, the time is really running.
I was going to say, yeah, John, to finish your sentence. you were about to travel, but COVID.
Yeah, because my role in this project is actually go to the local site and give training what is necessary, especially in the countries or in the sites. But unfortunately, I cannot travel, so instead I try to make some training materials. The first set is ready and is loaded on ITRC website, and I try to make such a kind of training materials as much as possible.
Yeah, and, maybe I see Agnes kind of we're trying to carry on with the breakout session here, but yeah, maybe you want to continue. I know time was very short.
Yeah, I apologize. I think we had too little time to really discuss the issues that needed to be discussed. A suggestion just made by Giuliano was that people could try and answer that first question about your what are the barriers to your the main barriers you see to the implementation laboratory-wise to the implementation of the BPaL regimen, and how do you score your the readiness of your laboratory system from 1 to 10. Maybe participants can score that in the chat, and then we can wrap up. Maybe we can take another 5 minutes to do that, and then wrap up what comes out of that.
Okay, good idea. So 10 must be the most appropriate score, right?
10 being that you're fully ready, and 0 being that you're not ready at all.
Yeah, well, Agnes, I think I can give you the feedback from kind of group one. I have in 1 minute, I think.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I kind of that we only had time to touch on the first two questions, and which was kind of how to maintain close communication, and kind of Inga was making the point that really the clinicians should be in regular contact with labs like the National Reference Lab. Kind of one, just to make sure they get the results, but also and to really kind of motivate the lab to see that what they are doing is important, and that it's not a bit of an academic thing, that actually this is crucial for the appropriate care of the patient. Kind of one thing that John was pointing out was that under the LIFT TB project, one thing that is actively going on is the linkage of the NTP, the national lab, and the OR sites. So it is creating a sort of more harmonious group, that they actually talk and understand each other, and kind of things hopefully get better. The other issue, which was the second one about the methods, is raising the challenges that some countries face with LPA, especially second line LPA, for many reasons. And hence kind of the opportunity now is to kind of see whether again the expert XDR system is a solution, in the sense that it can be decentralized and hopefully will be more rapid. But obviously, as we learned with the rollout of expert itself, it's not a simple thing to do. That's as far as we got.
Thank you very much, Mansa. Sorry, Fraser. I think Mansa, you were reporting section 2.
Yeah, I was reporting on section 2, and so what we discussed also was mainly the first 3 questions. So it was centered also on the LPA, because Nigeria was explaining their experience and difficulties that they have with the LPA and the turnaround time of the results and the lack of communications. So which creates a gap between the lab and the clinicians. So, and what also was thought that, yeah, the expert XDR might be an option, you know, in those kind of situations where there are issues with the turnaround time from the reference lab, so that the XDR, the expert XDR might be used as an option than second line LPA. So the other thing that we discussed was the storage of isolates also for the testing. So and if in case there are difficulties of obtaining the second line LPA, and also this might be an options also in case if there are any relapse to see whether it's a relapse or a reinfections. So these were the main thing that we discussed. And so, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And then for breakout room 3 on this session on lab assessment, we heard barriers for access to second line DST from Niger, which had to do with the availability or unavailability of human resources for laboratory, both not having sufficient staff in the reference laboratory, as well as not having sufficient training, and also sometimes the unavailability of second line LPA tests for fluoroquinolone resistance. So here with maybe I would like to end this session on the laboratory. I thought there was one more person with hands up. Sorry, and I dropped out myself just now. For now, I would like to introduce Susan Staples from South Africa to introduce us to the BPaL implementation guide. which you developed.
Thank you very much. Let me just share my screen. Can everyone see it in the correct mode?
Yes.
Great. I'll try and do a speed presentation because I know we are pressed for time. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity just to discuss the BPaL implementation guide that we have been developing. Just giving a brief overview of what the guide contains and a little bit of a brief summary of each section. So firstly, I have no conflict of interest to report. So the BPaL implementation guide was basically developed off of all of the promising results we've been seeing for BPaL in research recently, and also having the support of the WHO and the FDA, for example, for this rollout, and having such a massive uptake for operational research, as colleagues previously mentioned. It's currently either underway or planned in more than 14 countries. And there's also more than 30 countries currently procuring predominant, which made us think that programmatic use is probably quite imminent, even though it's not the current recommendation. I think that is what we're all moving towards, is to see this being safely implemented programmatically in as many patients as we can. So for this reason, we've developed this guide with a bit more of a programmatic slant than some of the other guidelines out there, but purely to get ahead of the game in terms that we're ready to offer support to countries who might be at the point where they want to implement it in a programmatic setting, and so they can do it safely and systematically. This guide was developed through TB Reach funding from the Stop TB Partnership, and we've had various collaborators involved in this process, some of them who are also here on this workshop today. So the content of the guide is basically 4 core components. We just have an executive summary initially where we try and highlight the key points that everyone needs to remember. So if anyone reads just this, we're hoping that they at least have a safe idea of how BPaL should be implemented. We have a background section where we highlight all research done up until this point, and also drug information from pharmaceutical into clinical to procurement. Then we have quite a robust clinical management section where we look at the treatment regimen in detail with some advice on starting, stopping, and withdrawing patients. We have a patient monitoring schedule and a side effect management guide and some general care and support tips. Which is slightly different to just a normal clinical guideline, is we've done a little bit of real world research in implementers within South Africa, because we're in the fortunate position that we have a lot of implementers and clinicians already using the BPaL guide. So we did a few interviews and surveys with these healthcare workers in order to get some lessons learned in the field, advice that they would share with other implementers, and also collated some of this information as a FAQ section for future implementers to easily access crucial information. And then lastly, we didn't want this to just be a clinical guide. So we also looked at the country level considerations for TB programs and what they would need to take into account when they decide to implement the BPaL guide in their country. So looking at either of both the clinical considerations as well as infrastructure and policies that they would need to take into consideration. So the regimen we captured within the guide is the current WHO and FDA approved regimen, which Manza went into detail, so I won't repeat this, but we are aware that with the Xenix study offering good efficacy at 600 milligrams, there might be a change in our future where this would be acceptable, and at that point the guide would have to be amended. But as it stands at the moment, we are still looking at the classic 1,200 milligrams dose daily. We have a sectional patient selection. Again, this is very similar to what was presented for the protocol implementation for OR. And we try to keep it as close to the proposed OR recommendations as well, because as I said, we need to do this in a safe manner. It's not that we have experience for vast programmatic rollout yet. So I think we are keeping it slightly more controlled than normal programmatic implementation would be, but less so than strict research. So trying to have as many patients benefit from the regimen as possible without compromising on safety. So some of the main considerations we do take into account is age. So above 14, we do have weight limits. We are still contraindicated for pregnancy and lactating patients. We do recommend that we don't involve patients with brain or bone extrapulmonary TB, but anything other than that, we are a little bit more flexible on. Considerations with regards to concomitant medications, medical history, and lab abnormalities, especially hemoglobin. Obviously, this is just a very superficial look at some of the inclusion and exclusion criteria that needs to be considered, but it's broken down in a lot more detail within the guide. Given our experience with HIV in our setting, HIV status is not a contraindication for programmatic use of BPaL. The side effect management in the guide we've taken by system. So we've looked at all of the potential systems, for example, neurological, cardiovascular, hematological, and given the most common side effects that could be seen with the drugs and how to approach them. We specifically put a lot of attention to linezolid-related toxicity because it is what's most often seen. And I think it's also what probably gives most clinicians a bit of concern to implement this regimen. We've been very fortunate that we work with very experienced clinicians that have dealt with a lot of linezolid toxicities, and we were able to develop a flow diagram as a one-page, what we call a printout, that you could pull from the guide and stick on a wall, where we take you through how to adjust linezolid dosing according to what you may see either on lab results or clinically. So I think that's a very useful part of the guide. Give some guidance on concomitant medications to consider when you do see an AE, and specifically most often how it impacts on the QTCF interval and the interactions of bedaquiline and linezolid in an R setting, also cross toxicity with other ARVs. So some of the lessons learned in the field, and I figured I'd just give a quick snapshot because I think it is useful for newer implementers to see what current implementers felt was important, is firstly to know your protocol or guidelines if it's not in an OR setting and how to manage the side effects, to watch out for linezolid toxicity and to monitor patients closely, especially those with multiple cavitations, and before starting to test for bedaquiline and linezolid sensitivity. Sorry, these are laborious, these are direct quotes. To also how balancing the side effects of linezolid, such as peripheral neuropathy and bone marrow suppression with TBQ, and discussing this with the patient ahead of time. There's a lot of patients that were actually willing to tolerate side effects like peripheral neuropathy if they felt that they would benefit more from a prolonged high dose linezolid. So it's very important to have open communication with your patients. The importance of eye examinations to look for optic neuritis should always be stressed. I think it's one that's potentially overlooked with the focus on hematological. Then we also have monitor adherence and adverse events and treat them properly. Determine your AEs present prior to starting treatment and optimize your patients medically before starting. So for example, here they suggested making sure you have a starting hemoglobin of more than 10 grams per deciliter. Be familiar with the common side effects and their management, and the special close monitoring in the first 2 months. I think the common theme here is side effect management and being aware of what to expect and how to manage them. So that's why we try to make a very easy to follow guideline specifically for this. When we get to country level implementation specifically, when a country decides whether or not to implement the BPaL regimen above what they currently have to available, there's some things that they need to take into consideration. Firstly is clinical outcomes that they are achieving with the current regimens, which is very much in favor of the BPaL regimen, as it's currently showing a 90% favorable outcome in the studies that have been done, in comparison to approximately 43% favorable outcomes that's generalizable across the current available regimens. Obviously, this differs from country to country. Then the second thing is to look at the treatment complexity. So the BPaL regimen can be about 750 pills total per patient per treatment journey, versus an up to 14,000 pill load for other regimens. And then obviously the added benefit of no injectables. Treatment costs is also very important for a lot of countries, especially low middle income countries or countries that's dependent on other funding. So research done by our colleagues at KNCV has showed that BPaL can save up to $4,000 to $9,500 US per patient in drug costs, and even more when you look at overall costs. So there is a saving to be had for countries in terms of actual drug costs, but obviously some things that need to be taken into consideration would include upgrading infrastructure and laboratory, etc., which would add added cost to the implementation of BPaL. So some major considerations, according to us and our partners, is to look at the ease you can include in your national guidelines and your ancestral medicine list, and potentially to consider technical assistance to for development of these guidelines. I know there are various consultants available in this role, and also the work that, for example, KNCB does also adds a lot to this. Secondly, whether your currently available evidence is sufficient. So we've spoken a lot about operational research. So a country needs to decide for themselves if they can warrant the cost and the time to conduct new research. Will it add anything to the existing evidence, or are they duplicating, and it would be better to wait for other studies to be completed? There's obviously donor considerations to be taken into account, because there is funding available, for example, from the Global Fund for OR research, and this can be investigated. And then to look at the tools that are available, for example, the WHO short protocol and the tools that have been discussed today, and how this can facilitate the OR research in your country. So then also we have to look at the requirements and the time taken for regulatory approval, which has been discussed in some of the breakout sessions as well. So there's already approval for Protonamide filed in 30 high-burden countries, so this should expedite the process. And then other countries can access Protonamide through the named patient access program. So there's a lot of effort being put in to facilitate quicker access to Protonamide before regulations are in place. Then we've just had a lab session, so countries need to evaluate their current access to DSTs, and also whether or not they can have a rapid scale up. And then lastly, it all boils down to cost, unfortunately, as well. So to look at funding. So what are the cost factors I need to take into consideration? Is cost of local international technical assistance, cost of the OR itself or the access program, and then hidden costs such as training and capacity building of staff having to implement it, lab infrastructure, and active drug safety monitoring committees that need to be set up. So that is a very short nutshell, and hopefully enough time to just give a snapshot of what we've been developing in our guide. And I would just like to thank the TB Reach and the Stop TB Partnership for funding the development of the guide, and all the other authors that have been involved in this endeavor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Susan, for sharing this rich experience, and also by doing so, actually wrapping up many of the topics that have been mentioned throughout this workshop, which are relevant and very important for the implementation of the BPaL regimen and the operational research. So actually, we were supposed to now go into our fourth breakout session of this workshop, which clearly was a little bit too ambitious because we are out of time. However, during this breakout, so I think we cannot do the breakout session as planned because we will have to wrap up now. The idea was that during the breakout session, there would be a case study presented to discuss practical aspects of the BPaL implementation on the example of a specific country. And I would like to request the workshop coordinators to share this case study maybe in the chat, so we can so people can have a look at it themselves. Then now I would like to give the word to Oskar for your closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Agnes. And I think that despite the fact that the time is short and there was no chance to go into the last group breakout session, but nevertheless, all the participants and the organizers benefited from this very rich discussions. And indeed, I think that this workshop has been very much useful for those countries that are currently implementing the BPaL regimen under the operational research conditions or having this in plans. At the same time, I just want to say on behalf of the WHO that despite the several challenges that has been expressed by the participants, and there is also on another side a very great need to help those people in need who can benefit from the treatment of this fully oral shorter treatment regimens under the proper implementation of the operational research conditions that is recommended by the WHO. And we definitely hope that these joint efforts in the harmonized approach and the data collection will definitely contribute to the future recommendations by the WHO, will make them stronger in terms of the moving towards the direction of programmatic use of this regimen for patients with XDR-TB. There were a lot of benefits discussed at the same time that are prevailing the use of that, and the challenges shouldn't be an obstacle. So with this, I would like to give the floor to other colleagues to for the if there are any closing remarks. Thanks you, Agnes.
Thank you very much, Askar, and I would like to give the last word to Sandeep Juneja from the TB Alliance. The TB Alliance, under the leadership of Mel Spiegelman, came up with this with the development of the BPaL regimen in the first place. So the last word to you, Sandeep.
Sure. Thank you, Agnes. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, we do.
Okay. Thank you, Agnes. Thank you, Askar, and thank you everyone for participating and making it a very rich and hands-on workshop and an experience. I hope the experience sharing was helpful for those, and I saw in some of the sessions that I was participating, there were countries who were thinking, who were on the fence, who were considering to start implementing BPaL OR, and I hope this experience sharing was helpful. If we can support more of this experience sharing, please let us know. Please let implementing partners like ITRC, KNC, we all work together as a community. Let us know how we can help and bring these experiences. And one underlying theme that I saw from the various discussions that I participated in or saw happening, that there is definitely challenges. DST, transportation, getting supplies and commodities in, but I also heard people have been able to get around them. So those who have not started, don't get bogged down or discouraged with those. Others who've been there before you have managed to solve those problems, and we can facilitate that experience sharing further and dialogue. So with that, I'll hand it back to Agnes to close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandeep, and thank you very much, all participants. And we hope that this workshop has encouraged you to use the BPaL regimen under whatever conditions are required at the moment. And let's realize ourselves that operational research just means ensuring correct patient inclusion with active drug safety monitoring and management, treatment with patient support, and monitoring of progress with documentation of results, which is basically what has to be done anyway when you are programmatically implementing any regimen in the right way. So please, with this, I would like to hand over to, I would like to thank you all, especially not only the participants, but also the facilitators and the chairs of the moderators of the breakout sessions. Thank you very much. And I'm handing over to Caroline from the union.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for attending today's workshop. So once the Zoom meeting closes, you will see a survey appear in your browser. We would appreciate if you could complete it and provide your feedback. You have to do it pretty much right away, as the link is only valid for a short period of time. You will receive also a follow-up email with the recording of today's event within the next couple of days, and as well as a certificate for your attendance if you complete the survey. On behalf of the union and our presenters, thank you for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.